Hello and welcome back for another episode of Microservices TV today. Here we have Shahir with us, and I'll let Shahir introduce himself, and then we'll go ahead and jump into a lot of client discussion as far as what we're having and how IBM and some of our distributed teams are working with clients and discussing microservices. So Shahir, glad to have you today.
Thanks very much, Rick, and thanks for having me. I mean, this is such an important topic, and my name is Shahir Dai. I'm an executive architect in our Global Business Services Cloud COC. Which is our center of competence, and I'm dealing with clients globally and talking about cloud, talking about Bluemix, talking about microservices architectures.
So what really are customers asking about? I mean, we have a very wide range of customers, and so they're a very wide range of both legacy or current applications, big, small, everywhere from Z to current cloud native applications. So what are customers asking for in the range that you've seen around the microservices?
So microservices is such a buzz. It's such an important topic, and customers are actually reaching out to us saying, Shahir, come talk to us about microservices, or here's a project. What do you think? Do you think we should use a microservices architecture? We haven't had to go to clients and tell them about microservices and say, hey guys, you should think about microservices. They're very much coming to us and asking us for advice on microservices. And I deal with clients that are pretty much across the spectrum. So small clients, medium clients, large clients, everything in between. Different industries. Even though I focus on the financial services sector, I've got clients in telco and some of the other industries as well. And they're doing interesting things. I've got clients that are playing around with microservices, thinking about microservices. Some are basically trying to pick a framework because you need a microservices framework. So they're thinking about picking a framework. There's others that have actually started doing some proof of concepts to try to figure out what they can do. And a lot of them are for greenfield development. Now greenfield development, it's few and far between, right? A lot of them have a lot of legacy applications, a lot of monolithic applications, and they're considering migrating these applications, decomposing them and moving to a microservices-based architecture. That's what clients are doing.
And so we've talked about some of that in previous episodes of Microservices TV with Kyle Brown and evolving or kind of taking the initial steps to doing a evolution from a monolith to a microservice, both for the application itself as well as some of the data involved in there. But what are some of the kind of the pain points or drivers that you're talking with customers about why they might want to make that shift?
Right. So that's a very good question because a lot of times clients say, I have this monolithic application, I want to move it to a microservices-based architecture. And the first thing I ask them is, why? Right? Because honestly, microservices architecture, it's complex, right? It's a bunch of processes, collaborating with each other to build this application. Yep. And they're inherently distributed. That's where your complexity comes from. So it is complex. So whatever pain point you're trying to address in your monolith, the benefits of going to a microservices architecture better outweigh that. Because otherwise you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And a lot of times clients come back to me and saying, well, I want to do microservices because of reuse. That is the wrong reason to do microservices. You don't do microservices for reuse, it's for resiliency. Okay? So there's many good reasons, right? I've got clients who have an application and they have a performance problem, and typically a performance problem, there's going to be a hotspot, right? But if they have to scale that monolithic application, it's very costly, and they have to scale the whole application. So decomposing the hotspot area and making it a microservice so that you can actually scale that on its own gives them lots of benefit. In other cases, they're just doing so many deployments. And every time they do a deployment, the changes are always in one particular area. So why should I deploy the whole application? Why can't I just extract that, make it a microservice, and now I can just deal with making changes there and deploying it? And that's a huge benefit. I have a client who has a large monolithic application. Every time they do a deployment, there's problems. They have a cutover plan that's a spreadsheet that's 500 lines. So what happens? They do fewer deployments. The fact that they do fewer deployments means that they put more stuff in their deployment.
Yep.
The more stuff they put in their deployment, the more complicated and more risky it is.
Yep, the bigger the deltas are.
Exactly. And so chances of a rollout are very significant. And when they roll it out, there's one problem that makes all the other good stuff come back out.
Yep.
So lots of issues. And if they go with the microservices architecture, that's not an issue. So there are some very, very good reasons. And I try to explain to clients, make sure you know exactly why you're doing it, and what are the pain points, and they have to, the benefits have to outweigh those pain points.
So I mean that's one of the key things that we keep talking about is making sure you understand the benefits, understand the reasonings that you're doing it, and
Exactly.
it's not just Tuesday and your backlog's done. So we're gonna change it to be a microservices-based architecture. You want the agility, you want the resiliency, you want the scale, and there's certain things holding you back from getting that in your current architecture.
Exactly.
So what would be some good resources for that you're working with customers to kind of discuss some of these things?
Right, right. So when I talk to customers, first thing, we have a red book up there. Okay, the red book, we've had a team, very experienced team, write that red book. Lots of interesting material, lots of guidance and advice in that red book. There's a bunch of examples, real case studies of what IBM itself has done. For example, IBM Bluemix DevOps Services is based on a microservices architecture, and that's covered in there. Some good patterns in there to follow. The Watson services, the microservices, the Watson microservices, they're based on a microservices-based architecture, and that's a good example in there. So I would say read the red book first. And there's no harm in starting small. A lot of the customers I have try to do what Netflix has done. And Netflix has done an amazing job. The Netflix OSS, I'm a big fan, the circuit breaker pattern and Hystrix, and all the components are fantastic. But Netflix is, they have a very significant portion of internet traffic.
Exactly.
They're huge, right? And they built everything from the ground up. And typically, we're not building things from the ground up anymore. We've got, a platform like Bluemix. We're building microservices in Bluemix. If you do it in Bluemix, you're getting a lot of stuff that, is already part of the platform that you don't have to do.
You don't have to manage yourself or take care of and manage all the responsibilities of that in a pure, 100% uptime type way.
Exactly. So, key advice: read the red book. Start small.
Those are some great tips to, really get started in this, because like you said, it is something where it is a very large environment to get into. It is very complex. So the smaller you can get, and then with some of our other videos we've talked on how you can learn in the same manner of starting small, let it grow, bring in other pieces as you need it, and just really not bite off more than you can chew, because otherwise that's really where projects will fail, as opposed to really getting you where you want to be more agile, be more resilient, and be more scalable. So it does take time, it does take investment, but it can be done, and obviously we're having those conversations with customers now, kind of looking to get there. So anything else you wanted to touch on before we close for the day?
No, I think we hit the key points on the head, and get the red book, read the red book.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so we'll definitely link to the red book in the video.
Thank you.
And then be sure to check back developer.ibm.com/TV/microservices for more microservices TV. And then, keep checking back, and we'll have more content just like this. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks.
See ya.
Rick.